I guess this event is going on for long enough that a lot of subscribers have asked me to talk about Canada and the trucker strike that is going on there. Now, before we begin, I would like to tell you a couple of things about truckers striking. This is something you don't see very often, and the reason for this is that most countries, when they realize that the truckers are going to start, they immediately start negotiations in order to avoid a trucker strike. Because believe it or not, trucker striking is a lot worse than almost any other sector in any country striking. First of all, truckers are like the red blood cells in an organism. They carry things, they carry oxygen. Without truckers, you're going to end up with shortages in supermarkets in a couple of days. In fact, let me simplify it. If it exists on your table right now, it's probably because a trucker had to carry it from a warehouse to the store. So truckers are incredibly essential for the well-functioning of a country. You can have a country without career politicians, but you can't have a country without truckers. It's impossible. Even in medieval countries, I guess you didn't have trucks, but you had caravans. So it's pretty much the same thing. It's like trying to have a nation without trade. Without truckers, trade can't happen. And it's not just the fact that they're essential for the economy. It's also the fact that trucks are quite large. And if you have a significant number of truckers striking, they can paralyze the state. They can block important roads. They can block traffic. They can do a lot of harm. So this is why most governments around the world take a trucking strike as something very serious. Now, in Canada, when the truckers first announced that they were going to strike, you have Justin Trudeau coming out and saying that, oh, it's just a minority of people, it's just some small voices, don't pay any attention to it. To which I raised an eyebrow, and I was like, that's stunning and brave, that's an interesting maneuver, let's see how it plays out for him. Because the last thing you want to do is to antagonize them further. Like, you would think the correct answer would be to either negotiate and come to an understanding, or at least ignore them. But antagonizing them is something that I have never seen a world leader do up till this point. And it's probably no surprise when you notice that there might be a lot more truckers protesting now than initially expected. Fact checkers quickly arrived on the scene to save the day and protect our democracy by saying, Actually, the Canada truck convoy is not an official Guinness World Record. While it is true that the current world record for the largest trucks were held in Cairo, and there's a lot more trucks than that in Canada, our rating is false. Because based on our research, it seems that the Guinness World Record book spokesman told the AFP that the convoy is not being considered as an official attempt at breaking the current world record. And as such, even if it's larger, because it's not official, it's not in the book. And if it's not in the book, then it's not a world record in the Guinness book. So fact check debunked! YouTube has been accused of suppressing live streams from people live streaming the event. The media is doing their best in order to ignore the problem and pretend that it's a lot smaller than it is, but nothing so far have seemed to work. Even when they try to do the very progressive thing, which is to find a couple of truckers that have hate symbols and hate paraphernalia and then try to say that all truckers have them, when trying to point out that there was a couple of violence happening here and there, and then trying to paint all the truckers are violent, claiming that the truckers are a bunch of cultists worshipping some unknown deity, claiming that the truckers have been hacked by the Russians and Putin himself is driving the convoy, in order to try and, I guess, paint the image that they're not actually Canadian citizens and their concerns don't need to be listened because they're evil people. You know, they have hateful paraphernalia, and as such, any concern and any grievance that they have can be ignored. As such, I have seen the press suggest that the truckers are anarchists, that they're anti-government, that they're Nazis, that they're fascists, that they are Confederate supporters. I thought that the Confederacy is a United States thing, but no, apparently they're in Canada. The freedom movement, which is what the truckers call themselves, are actually authoritarian National Socialist supporters. Like, literally everything under the sun has been thrown at them, hoping that something might stick. And I think it culminated with Justin Trudeau issuing the following statement.
I have attended protests and rallies in the past when I agreed with the goals, when I supported the people expressing their concerns and their issues. Black Lives Matter is an excellent example of that. But I have also chosen to not go anywhere near protests that have expressed hateful rhetoric, violence towards fellow citizens, and a disrespect not just of science, but of the frontline health workers and, quite frankly, the 90% of truckers who have been doing the right thing to keep Canadians safe, to put food on our tables. Canadians know where I stand. This is a moment for responsible leaders to think carefully about where they stand and who they stand.
Now, I find it very interesting that they're being labeled anti-science, considering that the scientific theory isn't making government mandates. That's a politics thing. That's like suggesting that Black Lives Matter are anti-science because the police are experts at stopping crime, and police use the knowledge of criminologists and forensics experts and many other experts from different fields at how to stop crime. So if you're against the cops, you're against science. It's pretty much kind of the same argument. Doesn't really make sense. There is a difference between science and politics. And also, I want to point out the over-expanding definition of the concept of being an anti-vax. Now, apparently, the only way you can be pro-vaccine is if you want the government to force everyone into compliance. Like, unless you have force, unless you have constraint, then you're anti that thing. So, for example, unless the government forces everyone into military service, you're anti-military. That's kind of the way the logic works now. But, I digress. This is not what this video is about. It's just like I'm noticing the ever-expanding definitions and the fact that you would rather insult and ignore people rather than solve the issue by, I don't know, talking with them, like seeing what they actually want, trying to solve the problem. Because if it's genuinely 10% of the truckers that are striking, if it's a small minority, then that's no problem, is it? I mean, it's just a couple of crazy people. Left them alone. Just if they do something illegal, call the cops. They will arrest the troublemakers, and that's it. If it's just a small minority, as you're saying. It's not a big group, right? It's a small minority. But the problem is that this small minority is taking a page from the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez method of protesting. They might have a little bit inspiration from the United States. And as such, AOC has decreed that the whole point of protesting is to make people uncomfortable. Activists take that discomfort with the status quo and advocate for concrete policy changes. Popular support often starts small and then it grows. The folks who complain protest demands make others uncomfortable. That's the point. So I guess they managed to take a page from this book because, as I mentioned before, the media is trying their best in order to ignore this event. However, it is a little bit difficult because if you go on Twitter and on Reddit, you will find a lot of blue check marks and journalists post things like this. Not gonna lie, listening to the white supremacists honk their horns outside my house is stressing me out. By the way, whenever you think about white supremacists and skinheads, your mind goes to truckers, right? Does this actually stick into the minds of people? Does anyone buy the fact that there is a connection between the working class, the truckers, the one that put food on your table, as Justin Trudeau says, and white supremacy? And anyway, oh fuck it, if they will stop honking, then end the mandates. Honking status update, still honking. The amount of noise that these protesters are making in residential area is obscene. I've been listening to constant honking since the early morning. It shows no sign of stopping. I have a headache from hours of honking. All these people honking for Freedom Convoy have got me disgusted. I didn't immigrate to Canada from Iran to have white supremacist protests under the guise of freedom. I don't get it. Like, do white supremacists not want to be healthy? Like, they don't want to vaccinate themselves? Like, if you're an anti-supremacist, wouldn't you want them to get sick? I'm just curious. Like, can anyone explain the logic here? But anyway, right. Adult babies, stop honking outside my home challenge. I have a headache from the hours of honking. Just took this picture from my porch. They're parking in front of my house now. We've been hearing the honking. If you drive down my street honking and wave a big-ass Canadian flag, go honk yourself. Yeah, but like, look, Justin Trudeau said they're just a couple of people. They're not that many. It can't be that bad. You know, like from what the press is telling me, it can't be that bad. It's just a couple of truckers honking. They're going to go away soon. How long can they keep it up, right? Right? I mean, Trudeau isn't lying to you. It's just a couple of them. I mean, come on, it's Canada. It's not the home of white supremacy. And it's not like when you think of Canada, you think of Nazi Germany. It's just like 2 or 3 truckers, I assume. And they're going to go away, right? Talk to them, Trudeau. Speak with them. Communicate. You know, it's bizarre to claim, but you are the prime minister of all Canadians, right? Every single one. Even if they're white supremacists, they're still Canadian, aren't they? So you should talk to them. See what they want. See if you cannot reach a consensus. That is the normal and healthy way that a democracy functions. Protests are part of democracy, whether you like it or not. So it's a good thing to at least talk with them. Have you spoke with them and you saw that you can't reach a consensus? Have you even talked to them? No? Maybe you should. There's also a famous post on Reddit, which got 102 upvotes, saying, our kitty fear pooped in our bed, among other places. She never has accidents outside the box. I'm livid. My poor little girl. I feel so terrible for the pets of downtown due to the honking. Yes, they're honking. Here's an idea. I mean, I'm not an expert, but maybe don't tell them what annoys you. I mean, if it actually annoys you and you're telling a person that wants you to be annoyed, will you get more or less? What do you think will happen? Right? So if I was a Canadian journalist, I wouldn't say what triggers me right now. When there are people outside wanting to trigger you. I'm just saying, you know, again, not an expert. I'm not part of the science. I don't know. But I personally wouldn't tell them what upsets me. So anyway, this is going on. I don't know how long it's going to go on, because after a while, you're going to start noticing shortages, right? Because there was already a trucking shortage. Now, I know this is just a couple of truckers, according to Trudeau. It's not that many. Fox News is probably fake news, but if it keeps going, you're going to end up with shortages, and then people will be upset. You think now it's bad because the cat isn't pooping in the litter box. What do you do when there's no litter? What do you do when there's no box because the stores are empty and they don't sell any anymore? What do you do then? So you're going to have to talk with them. Either talk with them or make them disappear China style. I don't know which one is it going to be, but I guess we're going to find out in a couple of weeks. So there, I made the video because a lot of my subscribers asked me to talk about it. Here's my take on what's happening with Canada right now. If you want the geopolitical analysis, Canada doesn't have an electoral college. And as such, there's 3 major cities that if a politician manages to appease, he's going to get the votes. And anyone who lives in a city and also lived in a rural area knows that what people in the rural area want and their values and their principles are usually different than that of city folks. I mean, think about it this way. If you're in the middle of nowhere and it takes 1 hour for the cops to get there, if they even know how to get there because you're required to give them explanations, Well, for example, you might want a gun in order to defend yourself, not just from criminals, but also from wild animals, like if there's a wild boar or something. Meanwhile, if you're in the city, you can call the cops and they're going to be right at your door within a couple of minutes. So it doesn't surprise people when people from the cities are anti-gun because they don't value weapons, while people from the rural areas, they're pro-gun because they need a gun to defend themselves. I mean, if you're a trucker, for example, you want to be able to defend yourself if someone tries to rob your truck, right? So it's just one example, the guns, right? But it's one. There's just so many other examples where there is a huge difference between the values from the people in the rural area and the people in the cities. And because of that, if you constantly ignore the people in the rural area who feel powerless because they don't view that they can ever be represented and they don't view that they can ever have someone that speaks on their behalf, well, you're going to get this shit. And protesting is still part of democracy because at the end of the day, they're still Canadians. You have to talk with them. I mean, sure, you don't need to give them what they want every single time because, yeah, I mean, you have a democratic system. It's the majority rule. All right, fine. But at the same time, you can't just ignore them completely, pretend they're not there, refuse to talk with them, insult them, stigmatize them, because you need those people in order to put food on the table. So if they're just 10%, talk with them. They're not that many, right? Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.